In this video, we'll get our solar system moving through the use of behaviors. Behaviors are scripts or pieces of code that do things. For example, in this project, our behaviors will make our solar system move. If you're not a programmer, don't freak out. We'll not actually write code yet, but we will see how we use behaviors to bring our Unity projects to life. Our objectives will be to use behaviors to get our game objects rotating in a logical fashion. We will also continue to discuss the parent-child relationships between game objects in Unity, and understand the difference between the world coordinate system and the local coordinate system of a game object. Okay, the first thing that we want to do is get our sun rotating. So I'm going to go ahead and select the sun game object. And we provided a few scripts for you to use, and the scripts, of course, are in the scripts folder. And the script that I want to use, of course, is the rotate around script. So one way of using a script is actually you can drag it and drop it right on a game object. And when I do that, so I dragged and dropped rotate around on the sun, if I scroll down in the inspector, you're going to see now there is a new component. So the script actually becomes a component of the game object. And you can see it's called rotate around, it's of type script. And there are actually a few properties specified in the script that we can set right here in the editor. So you can see there is a target and a speed. So the target is looking for the target that this game object should rotate around. And in fact, we want it to rotate around itself. We want it to spin in place. So I can set the target to any transform. So all the game objects have transforms. So if I click the little target symbol here, you can see it shows all of the game objects in our world as potential options. And I want it to rotate around itself, so I'm going to select the sun. Go ahead and close that. Or we can just drag and drop, the game object itself right onto that spot. And then there's actually a speed setting. So the speed is speed of rotation, and this is in degrees per second. So if I set it to something like 30, it's going to rotate 30 degrees per second. Okay, let's go ahead and click play to see the result of this. And you can see here in the scene view, you can see it clearly rotating because it's got the little axes gizmos on because the sun game object is selected. But if you look down in the game view, you can also see it's rotating because the texture changes as it's rotating around. Let's go ahead and stop that. So let's take a quick look at the script. If you actually select a script in the project view, you're going to see a little preview of the script. Now, this is not an editor. This is just a preview. And really, it's only good at looking at short scripts. Anything longer than what's shown here doesn't really work in the inspector. So for that, we actually use an external tool. So with Unity comes Visual Studio Community, which is a Microsoft code editing tool or integrated development environment, IDE. And if you go under Unity Preferences, so on Windows under Edit and go down to Preferences, on the Mac it would be under the Unity menu and go to Preferences. So let's go there. And you can see that there is an option for external tools. And one of those is the external script editor. And if you just installed Unity, it probably says Open by File Extension. I do recommend clicking this down arrow and changing this to Visual Studio Community. Now, if you actually are already a programmer and you own the full version of Visual Studio, you could select that as well. And in fact, you can choose Browse, and you can choose any script editor that you might have. But I do recommend using Visual Studio because there are some extensions to it that give you additional functionality related toward Unity. So let me choose Visual Studio Community here. And a few other options come up. For now, you can just ignore those. But do notice while we're here, you can actually select other external tools. So for image editing, for example, it's going to say Open by File Extension, which is probably what you want for this. It will open whatever you've got set up in your operating system to open up each of the file types related to images. But you could select something here like Photoshop or whatever your favorite image editing tool is. And the last option that I want to show here is this revision control diff/merge. And this is for the programmers out there. This is a diff or merge tool, so later on when you're working with a team and maybe you're trying to merge your changes in code to somebody else's changes, you can actually use a tool to do that. And you'll have to find a tool external to Unity and specify that here. So let's go ahead and close our preferences for now because we've got Visual Studio picked as our external script editor. And now I can just simply double click on a script. And this will load into Visual Studio. So here I am in Visual Studio, and you can actually see the overall script here. We're not going to talk much about code, but I just wanted to show you quickly how you actually get into the code and how you look at it. So in a future project, you'll be jumping into code and actually modifying the code. So let's go ahead and just close Visual Studio for now. And back here in Unity, I want to do something very similar to the Earth. So let me select the Earth game object. I want it to spin around itself. So we can basically use the same script, but let me add it in a different way. So you can see over in the inspector, there's the Add Component button at the bottom. And then I can scroll down and you can see a scripts category. So let me select that. And then it will show all the scripts that are in my project. So I'll pick Rotate Around in this case. And once again, we specify the target. So another way to do that, of course, is to drag the game object itself right into the target spot. And then we can set our speed here. And I'll go ahead and set it at something like 15. And let's go ahead and play. And you'll see that the sun is rotating and the Earth is rotating. So let's stop. And let's do the same thing with the moon. So another way to do this is, since we've already got this script on various other game objects, I can go to the Earth and I can select the little dot, dot, dot next to this component and choose Copy Component, and then go to the moon, and then select the dot, dot, dot maybe under Transform, and then I can choose Paste Component as New. So it's going to add that new component that we copied from the Earth. Now, of course, we need to change the target because we want the moon to rotate around itself. And, possibly we want to change the speed as well. So maybe I'll make this rotate a little faster, maybe something like 60 degrees per second. Now, if I go ahead and play, so we've got the sun rotating, we've got the Earth rotating, and we've got the moon now rotating. Let's go ahead and hit stop. So now we want things to rotate around each other. So rotating around itself is just simply spinning around itself, but we want the Earth, of course, to rotate around the sun. Now, there's various ways to actually accomplish this. One is through the parent-child relationship. So, for example, I can take the Earth game object and I can drag and drop it on the sun. Now, what this will then do is make the parent coordinate system of the Earth the sun, rather than the overall world or the overall scene coordinate system. So what I mean by that, if I hit play, you can see this. So now notice that the Earth is rotating as the sun is rotating. We set the Earth to be, 2 meters out in the X direction, and it is maintaining that 2 meters out in the X direction. It is just rotating around. That 2 meters is changing because the reference coordinate system is changing. Its parent's coordinate system is changing as the sun rotates. Let me stop that. Notice the moon was left in the lurch, so I could then take the moon and drag and drop it under the Earth. So now its reference coordinate system is the Earth, whose reference coordinate system is the sun. You can see now that, when I look at the actual transform on the moon, it says -1 because it's over 1 meter from its parent. And the Earth is, still 200, which is 2 meters over from the sun, which is, of course, is the same because the sun was initially at the center of the scene. So if I press play, now you're going to see everything is rotating around each other. Now let me go ahead and stop. So this is one way of accomplishing our goal of having everything rotate around each other. But let's try a different way. So I'm going to actually take the Earth and drag it back out, and take the moon and drag it back out. And, let me go back to the Earth. And I'm going to actually add a second rotate around script. So we've got one that is having it rotate around itself. And you can actually have multiple of the same script, and of course multiple of different types of scripts on any game object. So let me click Add Component, go down to Script, and choose Rotate Around again. You can see we've got a second component here. I'll set the target of this one to be the sun, and I'll set the speed to be something like 10. And then let me hit play so we can see this. Okay, so you can see that the sun is rotating and the earth is rotating and the earth is rotating around the sun. But it's rotating actually at a different speed than the sun is rotating. Notice when we did the parent-child relationship, the earth would always rotate at the speed of the sun's rotation. So this method allows us to, vary the speed here. So let me hit stop. But we also, still had the moon in the lurch. So, we could take the moon and we could child it to the earth because it is sort of a child of the earth in terms of its orbital rotation. But if we want it to, vary the speed that it rotates around the earth, we can also attach a second rotate around script. So let me do that. So I'll choose a script. I'll choose the rotate around again. I'll set the target to be the earth. And I'll set the speed, in this case, to be maybe -10. And I'll hit play. So now the moon is rotating around itself, and it's rotating in the opposite direction around the earth. If I speed this up and make it maybe a -100, you're going to see that it's really moving there. Or if I change directions and turn it to +50, it's going in the other direction. So by having this separate rotate around script, we can actually adjust the speed of it in relationship to its parent's rotation. And of course, if I stop, notice our properties go back to whatever they were before we hit play. So if I want this to stick, I would have to edit it now. So maybe I'll change this to +10. And now through the use of scripts and parent-child relationships, we have our solar system moving. Lastly, let's go up to File and choose Save to save the scene. So to reiterate, the world coordinate system is centered at the origin of the world. Often it makes sense to discuss game objects' location overall using the world coordinate system. So for example, the Earth rotated around the center of the world. The local coordinate system is the coordinate system where the origin is a defined location related to the game object, usually the center of the game object. The local coordinate system made sense to talk about when we spoke of a planet spinning around its own axis. Parent-child relationships add yet a third coordinate system. That is, the child may move relative to a parent's local coordinate system instead of the world coordinate system, as we saw with the moon moving around the Earth, as the Earth moved around the sun. Understanding the relationship between all these coordinate systems is an important concept to grasp.